Welcome to New Perspectives. I'm Casey Davis Uchok, and today we'll be exploring a place called Cappadocia. It's a historic region in central Turkey, widely known for its volcanic rock formations, carved valleys, and underground cities. For thousands of years, people living in this region responded to a distinctive environment by building directly into it. Homes, churches, storage spaces, and later entire underground cities were carved into the landscape itself. Together, these spaces formed a connected system that supported long-term settlements and periods of instability. In this episode of New Perspectives, we examine Cappadocia as a working landscape. We'll look at how its geological conditions shaped construction choices and how these carved spaces continue to influence how the region is lived in and visited today. Cappadocia refers to a historical region in central Turkey that includes parts of the modern provinces of Nevşehir, Kayseri, Aksaray, and Niğde. While its political boundaries shifted over time, the region's geographic identity remained consistent across centuries. The name Cappadocia appears in some of the earliest surviving imperial records. In inscriptions from the Achaemenid Persian Empire, the region is listed as Katpatuka, identifying it as a recognized territory within the imperial administrative system. Greek historians of the classical period, including Herodotus, also describe Cappadocia as a distinct inland region with its own population and landscape. Cappadocia is referenced in early Jewish and Christian texts as well. The Mishnah and the Talmud mention the region by name, reflecting Jewish communities spread across Asia Minor during late antiquity. Early Christian writings place Cappadocia within wider religious networks. The Acts of the Apostles records Cappadocians present in Jerusalem at Pentecost, and the first epistle of Peter addresses Christian communities in the region. Together, these sources show that Cappadocia functioned as a recognized and interconnected region long before it became widely known for its landscapes and underground cities. Understanding how people built in Cappadocia begins with the geological processes that shaped the land and defined what the landscape could support. Cappadocia's landscape developed over millions of years through repeated volcanic activity. Eruptions from nearby volcanoes, including Mount Erciyes, deposited layers of ash and lava across the region. As this volcanic ash compacted, it formed a soft, porous rock known as tuff. Over time, wind, rain, and temperature changes eroded the softer layers while leaving harder sections intact, producing the pillars, cones, and ridges commonly known as fairy chimneys, along with the valleys and exposed rock faces seen today. Fairy chimneys form when softer tuff erodes beneath harder cap layers, creating narrow, column-like structures. Many were later carved into and used as dwellings, storage spaces, or chapels. The properties of tuff were especially important for settlement. Its softness allowed it to be carved with hand tools, while its stability supported long-lasting enclosed spaces. Located on a high volcanic plateau with limited surface water and wide seasonal temperature variation, Cappadocia offered strong practical incentives for building into the landscape itself. The softness of Cappadocia's volcanic tuff allowed early inhabitants to create enclosed spaces using simple hand tools without the need for quarrying stone or transporting building materials. Archaeological evidence indicates that rock-cut spaces were in use by at least the Hittite period, around 4,000 years ago. Early carvings focused on basic shelters and storage areas, which were gradually expanded and adapted by successive communities. Over time, individual rooms developed into permanent homes. Connected spaces formed living areas and workspaces carved into cliff faces, valley walls, and rock outcrops. These rock-cut dwellings were durable, fire-resistant, and required little maintenance, allowing surface settlements to persist over generations. Carved architecture also supported communal and religious life. Over time, churches, monasteries, and shared sacred spaces were developed within the same volcanic stone used for homes and storage. From the late Roman period onward, Cappadocia emerged as an important center of early Christianity. The region's interior location and carved terrain supported monastic communities that organized religious life around prayer, teaching, and communal living. These communities adapted existing carving techniques to create spaces specifically designed for worship and instruction. Churches, chapels, and monasteries were carved directly into rock faces and valley walls. Interior layouts included apses, naves, and side chambers, reflecting established Christian architectural forms. Walls were often decorated with frescoes depicting biblical scenes, saints, and symbolic imagery, serving both devotional and educational purposes. Sites such as the Gureme Open Air Museum preserve clusters of these rock-cut churches and monastic spaces. As carved architecture supported life above ground, the same techniques were extended below the surface, creating underground spaces that addressed different challenges and uses. Across Cappadocia, a regional network of underground complexes was carved. Dozens of these sites exist, varying in size and layout, and reflecting shared knowledge of how to build below ground. Among them, Derin Kuyu stands out for its sheer size and completeness. Located near the modern town that shares its name, Derin Kuyu extends roughly 85 meters below ground and is made up of multiple levels carved entirely into volcanic tuff. The city is organized vertically, with narrow corridors and stairways connecting successive floors. Within these levels are spaces used for living, food storage and preparation, stables for animals, and communal activity, arranged in a way that reflects deliberate planning. Derin Kuyu was designed to support extended underground use. Ventilation shafts supplied fresh air to deep levels, wells provided access to water, and large circular stone doors could be rolled into place to seal entrances when needed. Entrances were closely connected to the surface, allowing the movement between above ground and underground spaces as conditions required. Together with other underground cities in Cappadocia, Derin Kuyu shows how carving techniques were applied below ground to meet security, storage, and environmental needs at a community scale. Historical evidence indicates that Derin Kuyu and similar underground cities were used during periods of military insecurity. From late antiquity through the early medieval period, Cappadocia lay within a frontier zone shaped by repeated conflict. Roman-Persian wars and later Arab-Byzantine frontier campaigns made underground refuge a recurring necessity. During these periods, communities retreated below ground with their families, livestock, and stored food, remaining hidden for extended stretches. Ventilation shafts maintained airflow to deep levels, while wells provided access to water. When conditions above ground stabilized, residents returned to their surface homes and fields, allowing underground cities to function as temporary refuges rather than permanent settlements. Derin Kuyu was also connected to other underground complexes through tunnels, indicating coordinated regional planning for movement and refuge. As these threats diminished, many underground cities gradually fell out of regular use. As political conditions stabilized and surface construction became more reliable, daily life shifted above ground, and spaces once central to survival were gradually sealed or forgotten. Some underground chambers continued to be used for storage or sheltering animals, but much of the broader network faded from everyday awareness. In several cases, rediscovery occurred by accident. One of the most well-known examples took place in the early 1960s, when a resident renovating his home in Derinkuyu noticed that his chickens were repeatedly disappearing into a small opening created during the work. While investigating where the space led, he uncovered a hidden passage behind a wall. What began as a narrow gap opened into corridors and rooms extending deep below the surface, revealing a carefully planned underground system that had remained largely unknown for generations. Similar discoveries elsewhere prompted systematic documentation and study. By the mid-20th century, Cappadocia's underground cities were no longer part of active settlement, but had re-entered public awareness as a documented part of the region's past. Now we move to the present day, where the region stands as one of the country's biggest tourist destinations. One of the most distinctive aspects of visiting Cappadocia today is the continued use of existing spaces. Across the region, former dwellings, storage chambers, and monastic rooms have been carefully adapted into cave hotels. These spaces retain their original stone forms with modern systems integrated discreetly to support contemporary use. Staying in a cave hotel is defined by the irregularity of the space. Rooms vary in size and layout, ceilings shift in height, and corridors curve or narrow unexpectedly. The experience is shaped by the constraints of the carved environment rather than standard hotel design. That same physical logic carries into visits to underground cities such as Derinkuyu. Entry is managed and guided, with visitors descending through narrow passageways, low ceilings, and interconnected chambers arranged across multiple levels. Movement is slow and deliberate, dictated by the original design of the space. Next, we head above ground. Visitors typically move through Cappadocia on foot, walking valley routes that pass between fairy chimneys, rock-cut dwellings, and open cave entrances. Much of this movement follows existing tracks shaped by erosion and long-term use rather than newly built walkways. Hot air balloon flights offer a broader view of the same landscape. Flights usually take place at sunrise, lifting gradually above the valleys and drifting across rock formations, agricultural plots, and clusters of carved openings. From this height, the distribution of fairy chimneys, cave structures, and settlement patterns becomes easier to read, revealing how human activity followed the contours and limits of the terrain. Together, walking routes and balloon flights provide two practical ways of navigating Cappadocia today. Last year, Cappadocia welcomed nearly 4.8 million visitors, and this year has continued to see strong tourism growth. Recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the region balances preservation with growing visitor demand. And perhaps one day, you will have the chance to see the magic firsthand as well. That's all for this episode of New Perspectives. I'm Casey Davis Uchoke. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious, keep discovering, and stay tuned to AFROTURK TV.